Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Welcome to the very first episode of the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to reconnecting with your health, your vitality, and ultimately yourself. This podcast is here to support you on a journey toward a deeper understanding of your body, your mind, and your spirit. What I call your health awakening journey. If you've been feeling burned out, overwhelmed, exhausted, or anxious, I want you to know this. Midlife is not the beginning of the end. So far from it. It is a wake-up call. It's a powerful invitation to reclaim your energy, your clarity, and your joy. In this podcast, I'll teach you how to create the foundations of health, what I call the seeds of health, through tools rooted in the art and science of naturopathic medicine. And for practitioners, if you're a practitioner listening, welcome. My hope is that these episodes also deepen your understanding of the principles and therapeutic framework of naturopathic medicine so that you can better serve others. I'm so glad that you're here. Well, let's talk about why midlife is a wake-up call. I think it might be helpful for you to have some examples or stories to relate to. So as I share stories about sample patients, just know that this is not anyone's real name or any identifying information. We'll start with Anne. I use Anne a lot. Now let's imagine that Anne's gone to her doctor and she's been told that her labs look fine. This is something I hear all the time, but Anne does not feel like herself. She's tired, maybe even exhausted would be a word that she would use. She feels like she can't keep up with the demands of her life, which normally were not challenging for her at all. She feels like her energy is a lot lower than it should be, given that she's struggling a little bit with sleep, but she is still sleeping. And her cycles are irregular, and that's not something that she'd ever experienced before. So when Anne is told, oh, your labs look fine, she feels very frustrated and dismissed when she shows up in my office, and rightly so. So one of the first things that I would do is look into her lab work and what is going on a physical level as I'm teasing out some of the root causes, or I like to call them buckets, that might be contributing to her symptoms. I'm going to start on the physical plane. And very often labs look fine because the right labs were not run. And just validating Anne's experience with her and saying, there are a lot of things that might be causing this can be really helpful on her healing journey. So then let's next talk about Rachel. Now, Rachel's in her 50s and she's postmenopausal. She's struggling to lose weight. She doesn't feel like she has as much strength, even though she's been listening to all those people on Instagram asking her to eat more protein and lift weights. She feels kind of weak and like it's been very hard for her to lose weight. She's also having hot flashes and she's really unsure. Do I go on hormones? Do I not? What do I eat? What don't I eat? Is soy good for me or bad for me? She feels very overwhelmed by the amount of information coming her way. Although typically she loves to do research, she's kind of a DIYer. She's not sure now where to go because she's gathered almost too much information and some of it is conflicting. So this is also a really common way that women show up in my office, and hopefully you resonate with at least one of those stories. I will share a lot more stories as we go, but I want you to know that if you do see yourself in any of these stories, if you feel exhausted or overwhelmed or like you've lost touch with yourself, or I often hear women say they're looking around like, is this my life? Like, or is this Groundhog Day? And I know I feel that way sometimes too. I'm 42 and life happens, right? Life gets you some days. So if you are feeling any of these things, then you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone. I see you and I hear you. And these struggles are not a sign of weakness at all. They are a call to slow down, to listen to your body, to listen to some of the symptoms and signs that your body is giving you, because you might not have ever been taught to do that before. And so whether we're looking at labs and we're looking on a physical plane at root causes, or maybe we're diving into more of a mind-body plane where we're looking at how we're holding stress, how we respond to stressors, or we're moving through emotional and behavioral patterns and responses, or we're talking more about things bigger than ourselves and our purpose, midlife is a time where we can't ignore these things anymore. Whether it's chronic or traumatic stress that's built up, our bodies are telling us to start paying attention. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I like to reframe it as it's not an ending, it's an awakening. It can be a true health awakening journey. And as we start to listen to these symptoms and resolve them, I'm not saying to suffer with them, we resolve them, we also are preventing future health issues down the line. So signs and symptoms from our body are not only guides in what we need to do, right? What we need to change, what seeds of health we need to water, but they're also signs from our body about what might be to come if we don't change those things. So it's an awakening, and I'm so glad to help guide you on that and to guide patients on that. As we move forward, I want to talk about how the nervous system plays a role in this process and how the nervous system is essentially this gateway to healing. It's also the lens through which we experience the world and these transitions. And when we have a regulated nervous system and we're in a healing state, it can make this process so much easier. So at the root of a lot of what we experience at midlife is a nervous system that's stuck. So stress, whether it's physical stress, emotional stress, accumulated stress over time, puts us into a survival mode. It puts us into a fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state. Now, I'm explaining this very simply right now. We will get into all of the nuances of this and the complexities. Trust me, we will. But when we're in this dysregulated state and we're in survival mode, we are not in our healing state. You have to be in a healing state to heal, no matter what you're healing, right? And when our nervous system is dysregulated, it's going to impact our digestion, our gut health, which is also a foundational piece of our health. It's going to impact our hormones. It's going to impact our energy, even our ability to think clearly. So first things first is assessing what state our nervous system is in, and then using tools and looking at our habits throughout the day that might be contributing to dysregulation. So using tools to get us into a healing state and looking at things that might be obstacles to cure, we call them. So maybe triggering our nervous system. So why is this the key to healing? Why did I start focusing on this? Well, I was seeing, complex chronic cases. I've tried everything. I've seen everyone. Can you help me? Most of the time I could. As I worked through the therapeutic order and applied the principles of naturopathic medicine and started with gut health, whether it was a chronic SIBO case or an autoimmune case that I would have expected to improve based on my history of seeing improvements in these cases. And I would get these cases that weren't necessarily, the needle wasn't moving forward in the way that I would have anticipated. Now, everyone's healing process is different. Everyone's journey is different. But there were times where I would have expected a different outcome based on some of the interventions that we had done. And I started wondering, what did these patients have in common? And all of them had in common that they were not getting into the healing state. And so I really started leaning into that as a practitioner. So as we discuss the seeds of health, the foundational seeds of health, as I call them, such as food as medicine, movement, hydration, right? I'm always going to also weave in an understanding of how those are impacting whether or not we're getting into a healing state. And that's really how I came to focus so much on the nervous system in my personal healing journey and then also in my practice as a naturopathic physician. Let's give one more example. Let's still use Anne, okay? So as Anne came to me and I was starting to ask questions about how she historically handled stress, I was starting to understand that there was a default state that her nervous system was used to being in. So when she was a lot younger, in her 20s, she had experienced some really deep depression and she had worked through that. And we don't need to get into what she did for that right now in this episode, but she had come out the other side of that and was quite a high achieving, successful midlife woman. She had a couple kids. She had a great supportive husband. She was functioning quite highly and not really dealing with that depression. Now, as some things started to shift, I like to discuss stress over accumulation over time. As things started to shift in her life a little bit, essentially her HPA axis, which we'll get into in a minute, wasn't able to maintain homeostasis or balance anymore. And so she started shifting into some of the patterns and experiences, symptoms, thought patterns, physical sensations that she had previously felt. And as I started to understand her typical stress management tools, I realized, okay, we can get back to some homeostasis, but we also were probably pushing through some things and maybe not listening to some of the signs and symptoms of our body until all of a sudden our body was speaking a little bit more loudly to us that we had to pause, check in, maybe slow down. Now, again, this journey is going to be different for everyone. This is just an example, but let's go with the example of Anne a bit more and let's talk about some of the tools that I first introduced to her that you can start doing at home as well. Some of the profound practical tools that I introduced Anne to immediately were around breath. And first and foremost, I wanted Anne to start to notice where she was breathing from and when she was holding her breath. So you can do this too. So just, you can put one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest around the area of your heart. And just start to notice where you breathe. I'm probably doing some much more shallow breathing than normal, given that this is the first time I'm recording a podcast for you all. Typically, I'm much more of a diaphragmatic belly breather, although my loved ones will note I will hold my breath when I am stressed out. So just start to check in as I am, one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. This is something I did with Anne as well. And we did notice that she was holding her breath. And that's going to contribute to more of a sympathetic, activated stress response state, not the parasympathetic healing state. Some of the ways that you can engage the parasympathetic healing state are just with breath work and long, slow exhales in particular. So once you've noticed how you're breathing and where you're breathing from, I want you to start to notice whether or not your exhales or your inhales are longer. Are they equal? Is one longer than the other? And this is something that you can start to manipulate and control. The most basic and quite profound breathwork intervention would be long, slow exhales, which will slow your heart rate. It'll tell your body you're safe. We do this with things like a physiological sigh. That's also a keynote for a homeopathic remedy, Ignatia, but I digress. So your body knows how to do this. You might naturally, innately do this, right? So just start to practice longer, slower exhales. That can look like inhaling to a count of 3 or 4 and exhaling to a count of 6 or 7. You can also do a little bit more controlled breathing. In school, we were taught 5, 7, 9, also 4, 6, 8, where you're inhaling for 4, holding for 6, exhaling for 8. I'm going to walk you through pretty quickly a box breathing exercise. You can slow down and do it again. If you're someone who breathwork is triggering for you, skip through this part. You'll know who you are. And if you're someone who needs to go a little bit slower with it, there are a lot of resources on the internet as well. I think I have a few breathwork exercises on my Instagram. So find what works for you, but get comfortable for a minute. I'm just going to walk you through one box breathing exercise. And this was a tool that Anne found was really helpful for her to do, not only throughout the day, which it's great in the moment that you're experiencing stress, but also preventively. So the more that you exercise your parasympathetic muscle, the more that you engage with a breathwork practice, the less likely you're going to be to get triggered or moved outside of your window of tolerance into a stress state. Okay, so let's start. And if you can't see me because you're just listening, then you can imagine that I'm taking my fingers and I'm drawing a box as I walk you guys through this exercise. So we're going to do an inhale, a hold, an exhale, and then a hold. Ready? Let's go. So we're going to inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Now, I went pretty quickly with you through that just so that you could see what it looks like. But as I said, find a breath work that resonates with you and just start practicing. Next, I want to talk about time in nature. So time in nature really excites me. It's probably my favorite regulating tool. So one of the simplest things that you can do is to ground. I will very often in between patients take off my shoes, go outside, put my feet in the grass or even in the water. I highly recommend time for grounding every single day. Patients will often ask me about fancy mats and grounding this and grounding that, and those might be beneficial for some people, but you can also just go outside and take your shoes off, which I find wonderful. Additionally, you can get out in nature. So for me, I love any time spent by water. That's why my office is right on a river now. I love being able to look out onto the water and get the healing energy from water. You can sit at the beach and watch the waves. You can certainly go into the forest and get some healing from the trees. We'll talk all about forest bathing in an episode, I'm sure. No matter what, however you do it, getting outside, especially if you can get into the sunshine, is going to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, and it's going to lower or reduce cortisol, your stress hormone. So get outside whenever you can. Lastly, one of the tools that Anne really liked was a body scan exercise, or just a check-in, essentially. So step one is always going to be noticing and having awareness of the nervous system state that we're in, and noticing and being aware of what our default state might be when we're stressed or when we're triggered. So checking in the morning is something I really love to do. I'll do just a quick body scan. Where am I holding my tension? Where am I holding my stress for the day? What thoughts are coming up? What worries or fears? And just settling and quieting my mind. And Anne really did like to do that at the beginning of the day. This is something that you could also do throughout the day. You could take breaks and do some of these tools. So whatever it is that you're drawn to, maybe give it a try this week and see what is the most helpful for you to feel more grounded and feel more calm. And why do they work? Well, let's draw it back to that therapeutic order that we're going to be exploring more. And gentle interventions like calming the nervous system and getting your body into a healing state are reducing stress, but they're also providing the environment for healing to occur. You're giving the body what it needs to heal. Our body is so smart. Remember, it's innately intelligent and organized and designed to heal. So whenever we're providing a setting of healing, so essentially a healing state for the body, it's going to know how to do its magic. And so breathwork is a great way to provide that state to the body. So as we wrap up this episode, I want us to start to think about the changes that we can maybe take action on when we leave each other today. So healing happens in steps, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but it does begin with you starting to water these seeds of health over time. So whether that's tapping into a breathwork practice that you enjoy or getting outside for a few minutes, the seeds that you are planting today and starting to water essentially are going to grow into the health awakening journey that you seek. And if I do anything on this podcast, I hope it is to at least plant some seeds of health in some of the listeners. So think about what's one simple thing that you can do for your body today. What seed do you want to plant, and will you commit to watering it every day? That can be spending 5 minutes outside in the morning. That can be 1 to 3 minutes of one of the breath works that resonated with you. That can be taking 1 to 3 minutes when you wake up in the morning and checking in with yourself, checking in with your body. What does it need? What is it telling you? And as we dive deeper into the foundations of philosophies of naturopathic medicine, I always want to essentially highlight the wisdom and the knowledge and the power that is within all of us so that you can tap into that on your own, on your health awakening journey. I truly believe that when women are empowered with our health, we can change the world. We will change the world. And I'm so glad to guide you on this health journey. Thank you for being here. I would absolutely love if you would subscribe and follow along. You can find me at Dr. Kelly Livingston on Instagram. You can check out my website, drkellylivingston.com. Leave a review and connect in any way and let me know what would be helpful for you. I certainly have so many things that I want to talk about. I'm sure you're not surprised if you know me. I'm extremely passionate about this medicine. And I'm also excited to have some colleagues and other experts on to highlight their path to healing and some of their tools. And I can't wait to see you again. So please follow along and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.